Okay, going to start off by explaining an aviation acronym. STOL, S-T-O-L, stands for Short Takeoff and Landing Aircraft. Uh, this comes in a lot of different flavors. For Air America, it was very important. For in Laos, there was a lot of places up in the mountains where the Hail tribes lived that you needed to get into these strips that were only 400 or 500 feet long and on the side of a hill, which was kind of exciting to begin with. Initially, they bought Helio couriers from the Helio Corporation in America. Now there's the old adage, there's only two kinds of Helio pilots, those that have crashed one and those that are going to crash one. For landing uphill in a short environment in Laos, you had to have your full flaps down, and there was wing slats that would pop out due to the air pressure when you slowed down. Now with these barn door flaps fully down and the slats out, your ailerons also drooped, and you were actually in kind of a controlled crash situation in a short uphill strip. You had almost full power on by the time you touched down, and if you were going to end up short of the strip, you did not have any options except to put it in short and perhaps shear the landing gear off. This was rather common happenstance. Or if there was a downdraft and you already had max power in there, it wouldn't pick up enough to go around. But it was our adventure into the STOL industry. And we went into other aircraft that were capable of doing that. We had a Dornier 28, a German manufactured twin-engine airplane. And it was pretty good in these short strips too, but not quite as good as the Helio Courier. Helio could get into ridiculously short strips and get away with it. Also, the de Havilland Caribou was good in this respect. It could get in and out of pretty short strips, but it also had the disadvantage of having everything hanging out, ailerons drooping, and on short final, you're pretty much committed with that damn thing to land. But we didn't have to take those into the real short strips. But then came about the age of turbines, and Pilatus Porter out of Switzerland had a great STOL airplane. But initially the ones we bought had French Astazou engines. This Astazou engine was a sealed unit, and you had basically only two selections for takeoff. You pushed a button, it went to max power, and away you went. Now when you touched down, you did have reverse thrust, but you had to twist the throttle handle and pull it all the way back to get a little reverse thrust. However, there was one big fatal flaw. They didn't last very long. We found out that they'd fail after 25 to 50 hours of flight time. Well, that's not enough to be able to work up country in enemy territory with an engine that's going to fail you in 15 to 20 hours. And you couldn't repair this engine because it was a sealed unit. It had to be shipped back to France to be overhauled or repaired. Well, they got awfully tired of doing that, and it was awfully expensive too. So we went to Garrett Corporation, it's a Canadian engine manufacturer, and got the Garrett engine. This was a great step up in the wonderful world of power. For one thing, you had almost triple the horsepower of this Astazou engine, and it worked beautifully. Except it had one other flaw too. There was a quill shaft in the fuel control unit that would sometimes shear. When this happened, the fuel would go unmetered into the engine and give you full power. The only way to stop it from having full power and burning the engine up was to pick the nose up and keep climbing. A load on it would keep the exhaust gas temperature down. But you can't keep climbing as far as the moon with that thing. So you had to shut the engine down and glide down to land. I had one instance of a friend of mine called Sandy. I was flying in a Volpar and heard him call, and he says, "I have an emergency. The EGT is going up and I can't stop it." I said, "Well, feather it and go ahead and land." I thought he was in a Twin Beach or in a Volpar. He said, "No, I'm in a Porter." And I said, "Go ahead and head towards Saigon, climb it on up to 19,000 feet before you shut the fuel off, and the engine will automatically feather, and glide down, advise the tower you're making an emergency landing. You'll be okay." And he did, and that worked fine. But they solved this fuel control quill shaft problem, and that became a wonderful engine for us. We ended up hanging that engine also on Twin Beaches, which we took off the 450 horsepower Pratt & Whitney radial engine and put a nice, neat little nacelle out there with this engine that produced 1,100 horsepower on each side. And it was a fun airplane then. And you had reverse thrust in this thing, so you could get it in and out of basically 900 feet if you had the guts to do it. I took this thing when they first got it in the Volpar. You took off and you climbed at red line, you cruised at red line, you let down at red line. Well, I took off out of Tonsanute, pulled the gear up, kept it right about 20 feet above the runway, and got to the end. I had over 209 knots, pulled the nose up about 30 degrees, and did an aileron roll. And the tower went ballistic. But you could do that, and it was fun. That was our beginning in the turbine ages and experimentation with Air America. And it also filled a bill for going into these short mountain strips in Laos. The other turbine adventure was when they hung two jet engines on the C-123K, and that made a rocket ship out of her. But turbines are the thing of the future, and they always will be. And until we get to rocket engines, I suppose. But we had a lot of adventures with the burgeoning future of these things in their infant stages. Thank you.